Welcome back to the channel. Really excited for this video. I want to do an in-depth look at one of the sleeper rounds. You could say an underrated cartridge, an extremely good 6.5 hunting cartridge. We're going to look at the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. This is the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. Very unique cartridge. It is a rebated rim. So what does that mean? This case head right here is a smaller diameter than the actual case. So this fits a standard like 30-06, 308, 6.5 Creedmoor case head, but the base of this case is half an inch, which is more than a 0.473 of the case head. So it's very unique. The parent case to the 6.5 Weatherby RPM is the 284 Winchester. Now, this isn't exactly a 284 Winchester. It is definitely been lengthened to fit a standard length action. So the case length on this, well, not the overall cartridge length, but the case length is 2.570 inches. And then your cartridge overall length to the tip of the bullet is 3.340. Okay, let's talk about one downside. I know a lot of distractors are going to bring this up, so I'll bring it up. The cartridge overall length of 3.340 is not ideal for getting the most out of your case capacity. But here, it's not compressed whatsoever, and I don't think we're going to have any compressed loads. And so, yeah, I understand. This cartridge was introduced in 2018. It is very much a deviation from normal Weatherby cartridges. It does not have a belt, and it's certainly not the fastest in its caliber, but make no doubt this thing is very fast. We're going to look at the velocities in a little bit and how it compares to the other 6.5s. The main competitor to the 6.5 Weatherby RPM, and what it probably gets compared to most, is the 6.5 PRC. On paper, you would think these are pretty similar. Actually, looking at it, different cases, it looks like the 6.5 Weatherby RPM has a lot more case capacity, and it actually kind of does. It has about 10 more grains of case capacity than a 6.5 PRC. Let me show you what the water grain capacity of the 6.5 Weatherby RPM is. Okay, this is a full-length, resized case, 6.5 RPM. I just want to see what kind of water capacity, so what we do is we zero it on the weight of the case without water, and then we'll put water in it. We're looking at a water grain capacity of 79.7. That's quite a bit. With almost an 80 grain water capacity, you could really say the 6.5 RPM really gets really close to what the 264 Winchester Magnum is. Now, 264 Win Mag, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a neck down 7 rem mag. So exact same case as a 7 rem mag. You know, this cartridge kind of has a bad rap. It's definitely not very popular right now, which is too bad. I think it's a really good cartridge. As I said, the 6.5 RPM is basically a modern version of a 264 Win Mag. So it doesn't have a belt, and obviously it's going to have a faster twist than 1-9. The Weatherbys come with 1-8s. So you can shoot the highest BC bullets in 6.5. So the 264 Win Mag velocities, Hornady says 30-50. You probably could get more, honestly. One thing I always like to tell people is reloading data and reloading books are fun and are very useful, but they're just a guide, and like everything in life, has biasy. The 264 Win Mag apparently tops out at 3,050 feet per second with a 140 grain, while the 6.5 PRC is before the 264 Win Mag, so Hornady admits that the 264 is definitely faster, but they claim you can get 3,150 with a 140 grain. Kind of a head scratcher, but anyway, thought I'd show that. So you're probably wondering, what kind of velocities is a 6.5 Weatherby RPM getting? Well, let me show you the load data from Hodgdon, and then I'm going to share what one of my friends is getting with a 26-inch barrel, bear in mind. And then in part 2 of this video, we're going to show actual velocities of what this cartridge can do with a 24-inch barrel. All right, I'm on the Hodgkin website, which is finally working again. If any of you reloaders have noticed, the last week it has been down and it's been frustrating. But with Retumbo, which is what I'm going to be using in my part 2 video, the 143 grain ELDX, we're topping out at a velocity of just over 3,100, so like 3,127. And if you take a note, that's not 65,000 PSI, so you could probably get 3,150, maybe a little more. Okay, so I want to share some load data from one of my friends. He has a 26-inch barrel, 6.5 Weatherby RPM, and he's getting insane velocities. He has gotten up to mid 3,300 feet per second with a 130 grain bullet. He hasn't tested the 140s or 143 ELDX, but he's confident he could get mid 3,200 feet per second. And so there's a lot of potential with the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. And as I've always said, if you get a Magnum, get it in a 26-inch barrel. Let's go ahead and look at the ballistic potential for the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. We are going to use a 142 grain AccuBond long range, G1 of 0.625. We're going to use a 26-inch barrel data, roughly around 3,240 feet per second. Check out that energy, 3,300 foot-pounds of energy. That's 7 mag territory. Really good. Out to 400 yards. Bullets going plenty fast. Expand 26, 28. Almost 2,200 foot-pounds of energy. And check out that drop. 19.2 inches of drop when zeroed at 100. This thing is really flat shooting. Now let's just go out to 500. Bullets going almost 2,500 feet per second, mid 1,900 foot-pounds of energy, and only 35 inches of drop. This is a really good cartridge. Now let's look at the 6.5 Weatherby RPM factory ammo offerings. It is limited. You're basically going to get just Weatherby. But they do have a decent amount of offerings. You've got a 156 Burger, 124 Hammer, 127 Barnes LRX, 130 Swift Sirocco, and a 140 grain Hornady Interlock. And so the 156 Burger going 2940 is decent. And the 127 LRX, I think that's a really good combo. They go on over 3,200 feet per second. The 130 grain 3150 and the 140 grain at 2975. So yeah, hand loading it and with a 26-inch barrel, you're really getting the full performance of the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. What are my initial impressions of the 6.5 Weatherby RPM? This is the first time I've hand loaded a rebaited rim. It is funky. It's just kind of odd looking. Look how small that case head is. It's a tall cartridge, and I'm really excited to see what kind of performance we get out of this bad boy. I do think it's extremely underrated. It is a sleeper round, and especially if you put it in a 26-inch barrel, you're right close to 26 Nosler and 6.5 300 Weatherby with a lot less powder and a little bit better barrel life. Now let's talk about some disadvantages for the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. Right now you can only get them in Weatherby rifles. That's the 307 or the Mark V. You can only get Weatherby factory ammo, which it's good, but it's very pricey. And barrel life is not going to be good. This is definitely a barrel burner. Again, this is like almost the same case capacity as a 264 Win Mag, and the gun writers in the day said that thing was a terrible barrel burner. It is what it is. I've never really cared about barrel burners, but just letting you know, barrel life's not going to be long on this one. And as a reminder, if you guys want to see more content, make sure you tune in for this weekend, because I'm going to get my hands on a Weatherby Mark V Backcountry 2.0 carbon, and we are going to be testing my hand loads. So this is a 143 grain ELDX with Retumbo, and I'm hoping for some good results.